Good evening and welcome back to another episode of Sleeping with the Dinosaurs. Tonight, we journey deep into the Cretaceous world of North Africa, where one of the strangest and most extraordinary predators of all time once thrived. The creature we will be spending our night with is the mighty Spinosaurus, a dinosaur that broke nearly every rule we thought we knew about its kind. With its crocodile-like snout, towering sail, and body built not only for the land but also for the water, it remains one of the most fascinating mysteries in paleontology. Before we drift into its world, I invite you to gently tap the like button, subscribe to the channel so you never miss another prehistoric journey, and let us know in the comments below where you are listening from tonight. Whether you are curled up in bed, traveling far from home, or simply taking a quiet moment for yourself, your presence adds to this community of night wanderers. Now, let us leave behind the present and allow our minds to step into a time when rivers teemed with giants, and the Spinosaurus ruled as the master of both land and water. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a wide, meandering river, its waters dark and glistening beneath a relentless Cretaceous sun. The air is heavy with heat, the kind that clings to the skin and weighs on every breath. It is over 90 million years ago, in a land that will one day become North Africa, but now is something altogether different. A labyrinth of swamps, deltas, and waterways stretching endlessly toward the horizon. The earth here is alive with the pulse of water, the crash of storms, and the constant chorus of life, both above and below the surface. All around you, the ground is soft and damp. Mud clings to your feet, as though trying to pull you into the river's embrace. Thick reeds sway in the slow breeze, their tips humming with the buzz of insects, some as large as your hand. Dragonflies with wingspans wider than a modern crow dart back and forth, their translucent wings catching the light like shards of glass. Frogs croak from the shallows, though these are no ordinary frogs. Some are the size of small dogs, their deep, guttural calls resonating through the wetlands. The sky is an endless dome of blue streaked with drifting clouds, but far in the distance, thunderheads are already forming. This is a world where weather is unpredictable and often violent, where storms can roll in within moments and transform calm rivers into raging torrents. The sound of distant thunder carries across the water, blending with the grating calls of pterosaurs circling above. Their wings stretch out longer than the height of a grown man, and they glide effortlessly, dipping low to snatch at fish breaking the surface of the river. The water itself is alive with movement. Schools of fish ripple beneath the surface like living shadows, shifting and reforming as though moved by a single mind. Some are no longer than your arm, while others stretch out to lengths greater than a man's height. Among them are the enormous sawfish, their elongated snouts lined with jagged teeth, swinging side to side like deadly scythes. Further below, armored coelacanths drift slowly, their bodies built for survival in a world of giants. Occasionally, the surface explodes as a predatory fish bursts upward, scattering scales and foam in every direction before vanishing again. Yet the fish are not the only masters of the river. Crocodile-like creatures lurk in the shadows, their long, narrow snouts breaking the surface in silence. Their eyes glint with patient hunger as they wait, motionless for an unsuspecting meal. These are not the crocodiles of our world today, but monstrous reptiles such as Sarcosuchus, growing longer than most buses, capable of swallowing nearly anything that strays too close. When they move, the water churns violently, sending ripples far across the river's surface. The balance of predator and prey here is constant, fragile, and often brutal. On the banks, the land is no less alive. Towering conifers and ferns dominate the landscape, their fronds arching high overhead, creating shadows where smaller creatures skitter and dart. Lizards bask on sun-warmed stones, their scales glimmering like polished jewels. Mammals, still small and unassuming in this age, creep quietly in the undergrowth, for they know they live in a world where giants reign, and their survival depends on remaining unnoticed. The air carries the smell of wet vegetation, a mix of moss, algae, and the rich scent of mud baking under the heat. Every breeze brings a shift in these odors, sometimes fresh and sweet, sometimes heavy with decay. Carrion is never far away in this place. Somewhere along the river's edge, a carcass lies abandoned, the remains of a great fish or perhaps a young dinosaur. Already insects gather in swarms, feasting upon what is left while scavengers creep in cautiously, always aware that larger predators might return at any moment. In the midst of this vibrant, dangerous, and ever-changing landscape exists the one creature that dominates all others, the Spinosaurus. Though we have not yet seen it appear in our mind's journey, we know it is here. Somewhere in the distance, perhaps hidden among the reeds or submerged in the deeper waters, the great hunter waits. Its presence is as much a part of this world as the river itself. Spinosaurus was unlike any predator that had come before it. While many dinosaurs stalked the land with thunderous steps, this giant preferred the margins of earth and water. Its life was tied to the rivers and lakes, a creature sculpted by evolution to rule where two worlds meet. To picture the setting of the Spinosaurus, we must imagine not only the land but the water, not only the animals on the surface but the teeming life beneath. It was a place of abundance but also of constant danger, where every movement, the flap of a wing, the ripple of a fin, the crack of a tree branch, could spell life or death. Now, let us draw closer to the heart of this land. As the sun climbs higher, its heat grows nearly unbearable, shimmering in the air like waves of fire. The river reflects the light in dazzling flashes, nearly blinding until you shield your eyes. Along the far bank, a herd of herbivorous dinosaurs comes into view. These are not the massive sauropods often imagined when we think of plant eaters, but smaller, swifter creatures. They dip their heads to the water, drinking cautiously, their tails flicking nervously. Each one knows that predators lurk nearby, and their ears twitch at every sound. Birds, the distant descendants of small theropod dinosaurs, fill the air with calls. Some nest in the trees along the riverbanks, while others swoop low to skim insects from the water's surface. Their feathers gleam with iridescent colors, catching the sun like living rainbows. It is a reminder that this world, though ancient, holds threads that connect it to the one we know today. The rhythm of life here is one of contrasts, stillness broken by sudden violence, silence shattered by the crash of a predator's strike. Every animal, large or small, lives on the edge of this balance. It is into this rich, dangerous tapestry that the Spinosaurus steps. Its kingdom is not the open plains or the dense forests, but the liminal space where land meets water. Its story cannot be told without first understanding this place, this environment that shaped every aspect of its existence. So, as the day presses on and the river flows endlessly, we begin to sense a disturbance. The fish are stirring in strange patterns, darting frantically from one side of the river to the other. Birds take flight suddenly, filling the sky with frantic cries. The herd of herbivores lifts their heads, eyes wide, ears flicking in panic. Something immense is moving beneath the surface, something that bends the very fabric of this ecosystem around its presence. The world has introduced us to its inhabitants, to its rhythms, and to its dangers. And now, at last, it prepares us to meet its ruler. Somewhere in the shadows of the reeds, the Spinosaurus waits. The story of Spinosaurus does not begin in the swamps and rivers of the Cretaceous, but in the deserts of modern-day Egypt, beneath scorching sands where the bones of giants lay hidden for millions of years. It was in the early years of the 20th century, when fossil hunting was still a blend of science, adventure, and sometimes sheer luck, that the first fragments of this extraordinary predator were brought into the light. In 1912, a German paleontologist named Ernst Stromer von Reichenbach led an expedition into the Bahariya oasis of Egypt. Stromer was no ordinary fossil hunter. He had a mind for detail, a passion for ancient life, and the courage to endure the harshest of environments in search of bones that would one day rewrite history. The Bahariya oasis was an unforgiving place, blistering heat by day, biting cold by night, and sandstorms that could strip skin raw. Yet beneath its shifting sands lay a treasure trove of prehistoric remains. As Stromer and his team dug, they unearthed bones unlike anything he had seen before. They belonged to a creature that was clearly massive, a theropod dinosaur, but with features that did not match the known predators of the time. Among the fossils was a towering neural spine, elongated far beyond what was typical. These spines suggested that the creature carried a great sail upon its back, a structure so unusual that it immediately set the animal apart from any known species. Stromer named it Spinosaurus aegyptiacus, the spine lizard of Egypt. Imagine the thrill of that discovery. To hold in your hands the remains of a creature that defied expectations, to glimpse through fossilized fragments the outline of a predator so alien it seemed more like something from myth than from nature. Yet even Stromer, with his sharp scientific mind, could not have foreseen the debates and mysteries that Spinosaurus would ignite over the coming century. Stromer carefully described his find, noting the length of the spines, the unusual shape of the teeth, and the sheer size of the bones. The teeth, long and conical, were not like the blade-like teeth of Tyrannosaurus or Allosaurus, which were built for slicing flesh. Instead, they resembled the teeth of crocodiles, designed for gripping slippery prey such as fish. This detail hinted at a lifestyle very different from other giant carnivores, though Stromer did not have enough evidence to confirm such an idea. Still, the picture was beginning to form of a predator that broke the mold of what a theropod could be. But fate can be cruel, even to science. The fossils Stromer brought back to Munich were stored in the Bavarian State Collection. For decades, they remained a foundation for paleontological research, studied by scientists who marveled at the strangeness of this dinosaur. Yet, during World War II, tragedy struck. In 1944, an Allied bombing raid reduced the museum to rubble, and with it, Stromer's precious fossils were destroyed. The original remains of Spinosaurus were lost forever. All that survived were Stromer's meticulous notes, sketches, and photographs. These scraps of evidence became the only windows into what Spinosaurus truly looked like. For many years, paleontologists could only speculate, piecing together guesses from incomplete remains found in later expeditions. Was the sail used for display, like a peacock's feathers? Did it regulate body temperature, soaking in the sun, or dispersing heat? Was Spinosaurus a land hunter like other theropods, or something stranger still? Without the fossils, answers remained elusive. For decades, Spinosaurus was a shadowy figure in the world of paleontology. It was mentioned in textbooks and children's dinosaur books, but always with a sense of mystery. Illustrations often showed it as a land-based predator, a close cousin to Tyrannosaurus or Giganotosaurus, striding across dry plains with its sail raised high. The idea of a semi-aquatic dinosaur was rarely considered, for the fossil record seemed too sparse to support such a claim. But Stromer's notes lingered, whispering possibilities. He had written about the peculiarities of its teeth and jaws, and about the strange proportions of its bones. Though the fossils were gone, the puzzle had not been lost entirely. In the late 20th century and early 21st century, new expeditions to North Africa began to shed fresh light on the mystery. Fossil hunters in Morocco discovered additional bones that appeared to belong to Spinosaurus. Vertebrae, skull fragments, and later, parts of a tail began to surface. Slowly, painstakingly, the image of Spinosaurus began to take shape once more. And what a strange image it was. The tail, discovered in the 2010s, revealed a structure unlike that of other theropods, where most meat-eating dinosaurs had stiff, muscular tails used for balance on land. Spinosaurus's tail was broad, paddle-like, and flexible. It looked more like the tail of a giant newt or a crocodile than that of a terrestrial predator. Combined with its long, narrow snout and conical teeth, the evidence began to point toward a lifestyle tied deeply to water. It was a revelation that shook paleontology. Dinosaurs had long been thought of as creatures of the land, masters of terrestrial ecosystems. To suggest that one of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs had taken to the rivers and swamps living much like a crocodile was almost heretical. Yet the bones did not lie. Spinosaurus was rewriting the rules. Imagine Stroma. Had he lived to see this? The fragments he unearthed more than a century ago hinted at something extraordinary, but he could never have known the full picture. The creature he discovered was not just another theropod with an unusual sail, but an evolutionary experiment, a dinosaur that embraced the water, blurring the lines between land predator and aquatic hunter. Today, when we think of Spinosaurus, we must remember this long history of discovery, loss, and rediscovery. It is a tale not only of fossils, but of human perseverance. From Stroma's early days in the burning Egyptian desert, to the devastating destruction of the fossils in wartime Munich, to the modern Moroccan quarries yielding new secrets, the story of Spinosaurus is as dramatic as the creature itself. And yet, even now, mysteries remain. Was the sail truly for display, or did it serve another hidden purpose? How did Spinosaurus move on land with its shorter hind limbs? Was it a powerful swimmer, like a crocodile, or more awkward in the water, relying on stealth and patience? The debates continue, reminding us that science is never static. It is a journey, just like the rivers Spinosaurus once patrolled, winding, shifting, and full of surprises. As we close this part of our story, we leave Stroma standing in the Egyptian sun, his hands brushing sand from bones that would spark a century of fascination. Though his fossils were lost, the giant he uncovered lives on, not only in the layers of stone but in the imagination of all who hear its name. And now, having walked the path of discovery, we are ready to look more closely at the Spinosaurus itself. What was it about this predator's body that set it apart, that tied it so closely to the waters it ruled? Let us step forward into the world of form and function and meet the body of the River King. The image of Spinosaurus is unlike any other dinosaur that ever walked the earth. Its body tells a story of specialization, of adaptation, of a predator sculpted by evolution to thrive in an environment that few of its kind dared to dominate. To truly appreciate its uniqueness, we must take our time, piece by piece, to study the strange anatomy of this creature and understand how each part of its body was tuned to a life spent straddling the worlds of land and water. Let us begin with the head. Unlike the broad, bone-crushing skull of Tyrannosaurus, the snout of Spinosaurus was long, narrow, and tapered, much like that of a modern gharial. Its jaws were lined with conical teeth, perfectly shaped not for slicing but for gripping. These teeth interlocked when the jaws closed, creating a deadly trap for any creature unfortunate enough to be caught. Imagine a fish struggling in the water, its scales glinting as it twists and thrashes. In the grip of Spinosaurus's jaws, that struggle would have been brief. The teeth, smooth and cylindrical, would pierce the fish's slippery body without shattering it, locking it in place until the predator could snap its head and swallow its prey whole. Along the snout were tiny pits, shallow depressions that bore a striking resemblance to structures found in modern crocodiles. These pits are sensory organs, capable of detecting vibrations in the water. Picture Spinosaurus standing half-submerged in a river, motionless but hyper-aware. The slightest ripple from a swimming fish would reach its snout like a whisper, guiding its jaws with precision. This adaptation placed Spinosaurus in a category of its own, for no other known dinosaur possessed such a direct link to the aquatic world. The skull itself stretched longer than the height of most people, a weapon as much as a sensory device. Its nostrils, unlike those of many land-based predators, were positioned high on the snout, allowing Spinosaurus to breathe while most of its head remained underwater. Think of a crocodile's slow, stealthy approach, its nostrils barely above the surface. Spinosaurus mirrored this strategy, a shadow beneath the waterline, unseen until it was too late. From the head we move down to the body, a structure that reveals even more about its watery life. Spinosaurus was enormous, longer than 15 meters from snout to tail, yet its frame was not built for speed on land. Its hind limbs were shorter than those of most theropods, giving it a more awkward stance when walking on solid ground. For years this was a puzzle. How could a predator of such size function with proportions so unlike its peers? The answer, of course, was in the water. Shorter hind limbs combined with a body low to the ground reduced drag while swimming. Instead of towering above the riverbank like a tyrant of the plains, Spinosaurus slipped into the water with surprising grace. Its forelimbs, powerful and clawed, may have helped propel it through currents or anchor it against the pull of flowing rivers. These claws, curved and sharp, could have grasped prey in shallow waters or torn apart carcasses along the shoreline. And then there is the most striking feature of all, the sail, rising from its back, supported by spines that stretched over 1 meter tall. The sail defined the silhouette of Spinosaurus like nothing else. Its purpose has long been debated. Some suggest it was a display structure, a billboard of flesh and bone used to intimidate rivals or attract mates. Others argue it played a role in thermoregulation, absorbing or releasing heat to help regulate body temperature. Still, others wonder if it acted like a keel, stabilizing Spinosaurus as it moved through the water, much like the dorsal fin of a shark. Imagine the sail breaking the surface of a Cretaceous river, a dark ridge gliding silently above the waterline. To smaller creatures, it may have looked like the fin of some monstrous fish or reptile, a warning that danger lurked below. To rival Spinosauruses, it may have been a signal of size and strength, a silent display of dominance. Whatever its function, it gave Spinosaurus an appearance so alien, so unlike any other dinosaur, that even today it sparks awe and debate in equal measure. Moving further back, we come to one of the most recent and revolutionary discoveries about this predator, its tail. For decades, reconstructions of Spinosaurus showed it with a long, narrow, rigid tail, much like other theropods. But new fossils from Morocco revealed something astonishing. Spinosaurus's tail was broad, paddle-like and flexible, more akin to that of a giant salamander or newt. It was built for propulsion, swaying side to side with powerful strokes to push the animal through water. Think of a crocodile's tail driving it forward in pursuit of prey. Now scale that up to the size of Spinosaurus. With its immense length and power, with each sweep of its tail, it could surge forward through the murky rivers, a force of nature chasing down fish or ambushing from below. This discovery, more than any other, cemented the idea that Spinosaurus was not simply a dinosaur that dabbled in water, but a true aquatic hunter, a creature that had crossed the boundary where most of its kin feared to tread. Its bones tell another part of the story. Unlike the hollow, lightweight bones of many theropods, Spinosaurus had dense, heavy bones, more like those of a hippopotamus. This weight allowed it to submerge more easily, keeping it stable in water instead of buoyant and awkward. With each step into the shallows, it could sink into the depths with ease, moving silently among the currents. Put all these features together, the crocodile-like snout, the sensory pits, the high nostrils, the short hind limbs, the massive sail, the paddle-like tail, and the dense bones, and you have an animal designed not for the open plains but for the waterways. Spinosaurus was a dinosaur that blurred the line between reptile and fish, predator and swimmer. It was an evolutionary outlier, proof that life will always find new ways to adapt and thrive. And yet, for all its aquatic mastery, Spinosaurus was still a dinosaur. It laid eggs, it walked on land when necessary, and it shared its world with other colossal reptiles and dinosaurs. Its adaptations did not make it less of a dinosaur, but more, a testament to the endless variety and inventiveness of nature. As we picture Spinosaurus in our minds, standing in the shallows or gliding silently through a Cretaceous river, we cannot help but feel a sense of wonder. Here was a creature that defied the rules, that evolved into something utterly unique. It was not just a hunter of the land, nor simply a swimmer of the rivers, but a ruler of both, perfectly attuned to its environment. And so, with its body examined, with its adaptations laid bare, we can begin to ask the next question. What was that great sail for, beyond its striking silhouette? What story does this towering structure tell about the life of Spinosaurus? If there is one feature that defines Spinosaurus, the image that lingers in the imagination long after all else has faded. It is the sail, rising high above its back, like the mast of a ship cutting through prehistoric waters. The sail was more than just a structure of bone and flesh. It was a symbol of the dinosaur's otherworldly nature. While its crocodile-like snout and aquatic tail made it strange, the sail made it unforgettable. And yet, for all the fascination it inspires, its true purpose remains cloaked in mystery, debated fiercely by paleontologists for over a century. Let us first imagine what it would have looked like. Supported by neural spines that stretched longer than the length of a man's arm, the sail could rise nearly 2 meters tall in some individuals. These spines were extensions of the vertebrae, each one thick at the base and tapering toward the tip, connected by skin, muscle, and possibly a network of blood vessels. To stand before a living Spinosaurus would have been to see a creature with not just immense length and size, but a profile that broke the horizon like a jagged ridge. The first and perhaps most intuitive idea about the sail is that it served as a display. Nature is full of extravagant structures that evolved not for survival in the most literal sense, but for communication, dominance, and attraction. Think of the peacock's feathers, the elk's antlers, or the bright crests of certain lizards and birds. These features are costly to maintain, sometimes cumbersome, but they signal strength, health, and desirability. Could the sail of Spinosaurus have functioned in the same way? Imagine 2 Spinosauruses meeting along the banks of a river, their sails raised in the heat of the sun. Perhaps the larger, taller sail was a sign of maturity, a message to rivals that the territory was already claimed. In the play of morning light, the sail might have caught the sun, glowing with hues of blood red, ochre, or deep green, if pigments were present in the skin. To potential mates, it may have been an irresistible display of vigor. To rivals, an intimidating warning not to test their luck. But there is more to the sail than its potential for display. Another theory suggests that it acted as a device for thermoregulation, helping Spinosaurus control its body temperature in an environment that swung between extremes of heat and storms. The sail, with its vast surface area, could have absorbed warmth during the cool mornings, much like the plates of a stegosaurus are thought to have done. Later, during the oppressive heat of midday, blood vessels within the sail could have released excess heat, dispersing it into the air. In this way, the sail would have been both a solar panel and a cooling fan, a biological adaptation to the challenges of Cretaceous North Africa. There is a poetic image in this idea, Spinosaurus emerging from the water at dawn, lifting its sail to the sky like a living banner, drinking in the first light to fuel its body for the day ahead. Or in the evening, standing still as the sun dipped toward the horizon, its sail glowing like a furnace as it released the heat it had gathered. Such a sight would have been both majestic and eerie, a reminder of how life often invents forms that seem almost too strange to believe. Yet paleontology is not content with poetry alone, and other hypotheses have emerged. Some researchers suggest that the sail may have played a practical role in swimming. Could it have functioned like a keel, stabilizing the animal in water as it moved with its paddle-like tail? When we look to nature for comparison, we see fish and marine reptiles that possess dorsal fins to maintain balance. Perhaps Spinosaurus's sail served a similar purpose, keeping its immense body steady as it glided through the rivers in search of prey. Picture the sail cutting through murky waters, visible just above the surface, much like the dorsal fin of a shark. To animals nearby, this may have been a sign of imminent danger, a silent predator beneath the current. To the Spinosaurus itself, it may have been a vital aid, giving it precision as it stalked fish or maneuvered around obstacles in the river. There is also the possibility that the sail's function was multifaceted, serving not one purpose but many. Evolution often shapes structures that are versatile, adapting to multiple needs at once. Could the sail have been used for display, thermoregulation, and swimming stability altogether? Perhaps its role shifted depending on context. One moment a signal to rivals, the next a solar panel, the next a stabilizer as the animal surged through the current. To further understand, we must consider the energy demands of Spinosaurus. As one of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs to ever live, it required vast amounts of food. Hunting in water was efficient, but thermoregulation would have been equally important in ensuring it could operate during long days under the punishing Cretaceous sun. The sail may have been as critical to survival as its teeth or claws. The debate does not end here. Some paleontologists have questioned whether the sail was covered in skin at all. Could it have supported a fatty hump instead, more like a camel than a lizard's crest? If this were the case, then the structure might have served as energy storage, a reservoir for fat reserves during lean times when food was scarce. This idea shifts the image of Spinosaurus once again from a sleek aquatic predator with a sail slicing through the air to a bulkier, more practical animal carrying a hump of stored resources across its back. Whichever version proves true, one fact remains: the sail of Spinosaurus was unique. No other theropod possessed such an extravagant structure, and few animals in history have carried anything quite like it. Its very existence forces us to re-examine our assumptions about dinosaurs and their adaptability. Where most theropods were built for power and speed on land, Spinosaurus was rewriting the rules, and the sail was its most visible emblem of that difference. Now, close your eyes and imagine again the rivers of ancient North Africa. A storm has passed, leaving the air thick and heavy with humidity. The water is calm, reflecting the silver light of a rising moon. Along the bank, a dark shape rises from the reeds. At first, it seems like a shadow, immense and silent, but then the sail emerges above the tree line, stretching high into the night sky. It moves with a slow, deliberate grace, its massive body slipping into the water with barely a sound. Only the sail remains visible, a ghostly ridge gliding across the surface, a warning and a wonder all at once. This was the signature of Spinosaurus. Not just its size, not just its snout or tail, but that great sail, an enigma of bone and flesh that continues to capture the imagination of scientists and dreamers alike. It was the beacon of the river, the banner of a predator that stood apart from all others. As we leave behind the sail and its many mysteries, we turn next to the scale of the animal itself. Just how massive was Spinosaurus? How did it compare to the other giants that roamed its world? To answer this, we must step back and see its size in the broader context of dinosaur evolution. When we speak of dinosaurs, size is often the first thing that comes to mind. From childhood books to museum halls, we are drawn to their immensity, to the sense of awe that comes from imagining creatures larger than buses, taller than buildings, and heavier than entire herds of modern animals combined. Among these giants, few inspire as much fascination as Spinosaurus. Its size was not simply impressive, it was record-breaking. To appreciate this predator fully, we must take our time and measure its body not just in numbers but in the language of the imagination. Spinosaurus stretched longer than 15 meters from the tip of its crocodile-like snout to the end of its paddle-shaped tail. That is the length of 2 large buses parked end to end, or of a city street lined with cars. To stand in its shadow would have been to disappear completely beneath it, swallowed by its sheer presence. Its weight is estimated at over 7 metric tons, though some reconstructions suggest even more. Picture an African elephant, the largest land animal alive today, and then add several more to equal the mass of a single Spinosaurus. Yet size alone does not tell the whole story. Tyrannosaurus rex, the iconic king of the dinosaurs, was shorter in length but stockier in build, weighing perhaps as much as Spinosaurus or more. Giganotosaurus, the giant predator of South America, also rivaled it in bulk, with a body designed for terrestrial hunting. What set Spinosaurus apart was not just its length but its unusual proportions. With its elongated skull, towering sail, and broad, flexible tail, its silhouette was unlike any other predator. It was not a brute force machine like Tyrannosaurus, nor a land-stalking giant like Giganotosaurus. Its size was distributed differently, stretched, elongated, adapted for the watery kingdom it ruled. Imagine standing waist-deep in the river, As Spinosaurus glides past, you would not see the full length of its body at once. It would disappear into the murk like a living submarine. Only the sail might break the surface, a silent ridge cutting across the water. You would sense its immensity, not by viewing it in total but by glimpses, the ripple of its tail, the flash of its jaws, the shadow that swallows the light beneath the current. Its scale was not always a matter of towering height, but of presence, a weight in the water that pressed against everything around it. Its skull alone stretched nearly 2 meters long, longer than the height of most people. To stand before it would be to gaze up at a weapon of bone and teeth, each conical tooth longer than a man's finger, built for gripping prey too large for other hunters to manage. The jaws could close with astonishing precision, locking around fish that would have slipped free of lesser predators. Each bite was a reminder of the power that scale confers, not just in brute strength but in reach, in efficiency, in sheer inevitability. The sail added yet another dimension to its size, rising nearly 2 meters tall in some individuals. It transformed Spinosaurus from a long-bodied hunter into a towering spectacle. From a distance, the sail would have been the first thing seen, rising above the reeds or silhouetted against the horizon. It magnified the impression of the animal's size, turning an already enormous dinosaur into something that seemed impossibly vast. For rivals, it may have been a clear message: I am larger, I am stronger, I am the ruler of this stretch of river. To compare Spinosaurus to modern animals is to strain the imagination. The largest crocodiles alive today measure barely 7 meters, less than half the length of Spinosaurus, and even they inspire fear. A great white shark, with all its ferocity, reaches 6 meters at most. A blue whale, of course, is larger, but it lives entirely at sea, a different kind of giant altogether. Spinosaurus occupied a middle ground, a reptile larger than any crocodile, longer than any shark, but tied to rivers and wetlands rather than the open ocean. It was a predator that dwarfed everything in its path, yet it was not unchallenged. Its world was filled with other colossal animals. Sarcosuchus, the giant crocodile relative, stretched over 10 meters on land. Massive herbivores like Paralititan, a titanic sauropod, roamed the floodplains. In this company, Spinosaurus's size was not excessive but essential. To dominate such an environment, it needed to match the immensity of its neighbors, to grow to lengths where even the largest prey or rival could not intimidate it. But scale also brought challenges. Moving such a body on land would have been cumbersome. With its shortened hind limbs and sprawling length, Spinosaurus could not match the speed of more terrestrial hunters. On solid ground, it may have appeared awkward, even vulnerable, compared to the sleek power of a Carcharodontosaurus or a Deltadromeus. Yet in the water, its size became an advantage. Its long body and flexible tail turned it into a living torpedo, capable of surging through the current with strength that smaller animals could never match. In this sense, its immensity was not just for intimidation, it was for survival, a balance of power that shifted depending on the medium it inhabited. Consider the fish it hunted. Morsonia, a coelacanth, longer than a man, Onchoprostis, a sawfish stretching several meters, armed with a snout lined with jagged teeth. These were not prey for small predators. To take down such quarry required a hunter of comparable size, one that could wrestle with thrashing bodies and overpower them in the water. Spinosaurus's scale was an adaptation to its prey, an arms race of growth that pushed both predator and prey to astonishing lengths. There is something humbling about this idea. For much of Earth's history, the balance of ecosystems was measured not in kilograms or meters, but in tons and tens of meters. The rivers of Cretaceous North Africa were theaters of gigantism, where survival meant reaching a size that defied comprehension. Spinosaurus was both a product and a symbol of this world, its immense body a direct response to the challenges of its environment. And yet, size is not just biological, it is emotional. To imagine Spinosaurus is to feel small, to place ourselves in a scale where we are not the dominant species, but fragile spectators. Imagine walking along the banks of a river as dusk falls. The air is heavy with insects. The calls of distant pterosaurs echo across the sky. Suddenly, the water stirs. A sail rises taller than you are, followed by the ripple of a tail that stretches further than your sight can follow. You freeze, every instinct reminding you that you are in the presence of something vast, something beyond your control. That feeling of awe, of insignificance, is the true power of size. Spinosaurus reminds us that scale is not just numbers on a page, it is the weight of presence, the shadow cast across water, the silence that falls when prey senses a giant nearby. It is the slow realization that in this world and in that ancient one, there are creatures so immense that they reshape the very fabric of the ecosystems around them. And so, as we marvel at its immensity, we must also ask, how did such a giant live among other giants? What creatures shared its rivers and floodplains? And how did Spinosaurus fit into this crowded, dangerous world? To answer that, we must step back from its body and gaze across the landscape it called home. To understand Spinosaurus, we cannot imagine it in isolation. No creature, no matter how mighty, lives apart from its world. The rivers and swamps of Cretaceous North Africa were not a quiet kingdom ruled by one sovereign, but a battlefield of survival shared by a host of other colossal animals. Here, in a land of giants, Spinosaurus found both opportunity and competition, allies in abundance and dangers at every turn. The environment of 95 million years ago was astonishingly rich, fed by warm, tropical climates and vast networks of waterways. The land teemed with life at scales almost beyond comprehension. Fish the size of modern cars swam in shoals. Reptiles stretched longer than buses glided beneath the surface. Dinosaurs, both carnivorous and herbivorous, grew to titanic proportions. In this place, gigantism was the rule, not the exception. And it was within this crucible that Spinosaurus carved out its unique niche. One of its most formidable neighbors was Carcharodontosaurus, a predator that rivaled Tyrannosaurus in length, though it lived a continent away, with blade-like teeth, each one as long as a banana, and a skull nearly as long as a grown man is tall. Carcharodontosaurus was a land hunter through and through. It stalked the floodplains in search of large herbivorous prey, striking with devastating power. Imagine the tension when Spinosaurus and Carcharodontosaurus crossed paths. Though their diets may not have overlapped entirely, one specializing in fish and aquatic prey, the other in terrestrial animals, the rivers and deltas would have brought them close enough for conflict. For Spinosaurus, the water was its domain, but on land it may have found itself outmatched. Then there was Sarcosuchus, often called the super croc, stretching over 10 meters in length. This crocodilian was a living trap, lurking silently just below the surface. Its jaws snapped shut with crushing force, more than enough to splinter bone. To a young Spinosaurus, or even to an adult that strayed too close, Sarcosuchus would have been a very real danger. Picture the scene: a Spinosaurus wading into a shallow river to stalk fish, its sail glistening in the morning sun. Beneath the surface, unseen, a Sarcosuchus waits. With a sudden burst of energy, the water explodes as two giants clash, their roars and thrashing tails churning the river into a storm. But Spinosaurus was not always the hunted. Its immense size and aquatic mastery gave it advantages that few others could rival. While Carcharodontosaurus prowled the land and Sarcosuchus lay in ambush, Spinosaurus ruled the middle ground, the flowing arteries of rivers where fish swarmed in abundance. It was here in this realm that it could outcompete most other predators, feeding on a food source too slippery and too elusive for others to reliably catch. Sharing this watery world were the giant sawfish Onchopristiis, its snout lined with dagger-like teeth that could slice through flesh with terrifying efficiency. At lengths of over 7 meters, Onchopristiis was no small meal. Yet its sheer abundance in the fossil record suggests that it formed a major part of Spinosaurus's diet. To hunt such prey, Spinosaurus's conical teeth were perfectly suited. One can imagine the predator lunging into a shoal of sawfish, its jaws clamping down with iron precision, while its tail whipped to stabilize its massive frame. Other fish, too, filled the rivers. The monstrous coelacanth morsonia, armored lungfish, and swift predatory species that darted like silver streaks. Together they created a living buffet for Spinosaurus, a bounty that justified its specialization. This abundance may explain why Spinosaurus grew so immense, a body fueled by endless rivers of fish, a size sustained by ecosystems rich enough to support giants. But life among giants was not simply about predators. Enormous herbivores also shaped the environment, each one a living fortress of muscle and bone. Paraliticton, one of the largest sauropods ever discovered, stretched nearly 30 meters in length and weighed more than 70 tons. These massive creatures roamed the floodplains, stripping vegetation from trees and reshaping the landscape with every step. To Spinosaurus, they were unlikely prey, too large, too dangerous, and too land-bound. Yet their presence defined the ecosystem. When they moved, rivers shifted course. When they fell, whether from age or disease, their carcasses became feasts for every predator and scavenger, Spinosaurus included. Smaller dinosaurs also shared this land. Agile herbivores grazed in herds, quick-footed and alert to danger. Their presence drew in predators like Deltadromeus, a sleek, fast hunter built for pursuit. Though Deltadromeus and Spinosaurus were not direct competitors, their coexistence added yet another layer to the intricate web of survival. The rivers were not simply places of food, but crossroads where creatures of all shapes and strategies intersected. It is worth pausing to imagine the soundscape of this world. The calls of Paraliticton echoing across the floodplain, the deep bellow of a Spinosaurus vibrating through the reeds, the guttural hiss of Sarcosuchus as it slid into the water, the screeches of pterosaurs overhead, circling like vultures in search of scraps. Each sound was a message, a warning, a claim, a cry of hunger. Together they created a chorus of giants, a reminder that this land was not empty but full to bursting with life. For Spinosaurus, survival meant navigating this crowded stage with care. It had to avoid the crushing jaws of Sarcosuchus, outmaneuver the territorial presence of Carcharodontosaurus, and compete with smaller, faster predators for resources. Yet it had an advantage that none of them could match. It was a master of two worlds. When danger threatened on land, it could retreat to the water. When fish swam in abundance, it could dive and pursue them with a skill its rivals lacked. Its adaptations gave it flexibility, and in an environment this dangerous flexibility was everything. Still, there must have been moments of terrible conflict. Imagine two giants, a Spinosaurus and a Carcharodontosaurus, meeting at the edge of a river. Perhaps both had come to claim a carcass of a fallen Paraliticton. The air grows tense, the smell of blood heavy in the heat. The Spinosaurus rears, its sail towering, a warning in flesh and bone. The Carcharodontosaurus lowers its head, jaws opening wide to reveal serrated blades. Neither wants to risk injury, for in a world this harsh, wounds can mean death. Yet the clash is inevitable. Dust rises, water splashes, and for a moment the ground trembles beneath their combined fury. Such encounters would not have been daily, but they remind us that Spinosaurus lived not as a solitary ruler, but as one actor in a theatre filled with giants. Its dominance was conditional, shifting depending on whether it stood on the bank or swam in the depths. Its life was not one of easy mastery, but of constant negotiation, with rivals, with prey, with the shifting tides of an unforgiving world. And yet, amid the danger, there was abundance. The rivers teemed with food, the skies with prey. For all its challenges, this was a land of plenty, a place where giants could not only survive but thrive. Spinosaurus found its place here, not by brute force alone, but by innovation, by adapting to the rivers, by becoming something new. As we leave behind this landscape of colossal neighbors, we are left with a portrait of Spinosaurus not as an isolated monster, but as part of a vast, dynamic ecosystem. It was one thread in a tapestry woven from giants, each one shaping the lives of the others. To understand it fully, we must not only see its body and its sail, but its role among these titans. And now, having seen the company it kept, we can follow Spinosaurus more closely into its true realm, the rivers and lakes that defined its life. Let us dive beneath the surface and watch as the great sail-backed hunter takes its place among the currents. To follow Spinosaurus into its true domain, we must leave the banks of the Cretaceous rivers behind and step quietly into the water. Here, beneath the shimmering surface, lies the kingdom where this predator reigned supreme. The rivers and lakes of North Africa were not mere watering holes, not simply places where land-bound creatures gathered to drink. They were vast ecosystems in their own right, brimming with life, complex and perilous, and it was here that Spinosaurus was most at home. The first thing to understand about these waterways is their abundance. Warm, nutrient-rich currents fed swarms of fish of every size and shape. Some darted like silver arrows, schooling in clouds that shifted and twisted with fluid precision. Others, like the giant coelacanth morsonia, moved with ponderous grace, their scales shining like armor. The sawfish Onchopristis, with its weaponized snout, patrolled the shallows, while lungfish drifted through muddy bottoms, waiting for their chance to gulp air. These rivers were living larders, places where food was everywhere, if you had the skill to catch it. Spinosaurus had more than skill. It had a body engineered for this watery world. Its long, narrow snout cut through the current like a blade, while sensory pits along its jaws detected the faintest vibrations. Imagine the patience of this hunter, standing nearly motionless in waist-deep water, the tip of its snout just above the surface, nostrils raised like a crocodile's. The river flows, fish stir unseen, and then the faintest ripple, a whisper of motion. Spinosaurus lunges, jaws snapping shut with perfect accuracy, its teeth locking around a thrashing fish that never saw the strike coming. But unlike crocodiles, Spinosaurus was not limited to ambush. Its body suggested movement, pursuit, a predator capable of more than waiting. With a tail broad and flexible, like the blade of a great paddle, it could surge forward with astonishing speed. Picture the sudden burst, the tail whipping side to side, driving the massive body through the murky depths. The fish scatter, but too late. One is caught in the jaws, shaken violently, and swallowed whole. The water churns with foam and scales before settling again into silence. Its dense bones played a vital role in this underwater mastery, where many theropods had hollow bones to lighten their weight for running on land. Spinosaurus carried skeletons filled with density, pulling it down into the water with ease. It did not float awkwardly like a stranded carcass, but sank smoothly, gliding beneath the surface with the calm of a creature perfectly adapted to its environment. Like a hippopotamus slipping below the waves, Spinosaurus could move unseen, an immense shadow in the currents. Hunting in water also allowed it to avoid much of the competition that plagued land predators. While Carcharodontosaurus clashed with rivals over sauropod carcasses, and Sarcosuchus waited in ambush for the unwary, Spinosaurus slipped into a realm where its rivals could not follow. Fish were plentiful, and while dangerous in their own right, a thrashing sawfish could wound even a giant. They lacked the cunning and competition of other theropods. By turning to the rivers, Spinosaurus had claimed a kingdom of abundance, one where its size and adaptations gave it dominance. Yet life here was not without danger. The rivers themselves could be treacherous. Seasonal floods transformed gentle currents into roaring torrents, sweeping away everything in their path. Imagine a Spinosaurus caught in one of these floods, its sail rising above the churning water as it fought to keep control. Logs, boulders and carcasses hurtled downstream, and survival meant strength and stamina. Even the master of rivers was at the mercy of the water's fury. Nor could Spinosaurus completely avoid confrontation. Sarcosuchus and other large crocodilian relatives shared these waters, and while Spinosaurus was larger, an ambush from below could still prove deadly. Battles between these titans must have been violent and sudden. Explosions of spray and roars, tails thrashing, water turning red as predator met predator. In such moments, the river was less a kingdom than a battlefield. Still, Spinosaurus's mastery was unmatched. Consider the variety of hunting strategies it may have used. At times, it stood still like a heron waiting for fish to come within reach. At other times, it may have chased shoals into shallows, its immense body driving them into panic before it struck. Its claws, long and curved, could have scooped prey from the water's edge or pinned a wriggling fish against the muddy bank. Every part of its body was a tool in its arsenal: jaws for gripping, claws for seizing, tail for propulsion, sail perhaps even for stability. Night in the rivers brought a different kind of mastery. As the sun dipped and the air cooled, the waters remained alive. Spinosaurus, with its keen senses, may have hunted just as effectively in the darkness, feeling vibrations through its snout, guided not by sight but by the whispers of the current. Imagine the silence of night broken by the sudden splash of a strike, the gleam of moonlight on water, and the shadow of a sail drifting silently beneath the stars. Its mastery was not just physical but ecological. By hunting primarily in water, Spinosaurus relieved pressure on terrestrial prey. Herbivores like Paraliteton could graze without constant threat of predation from this giant, while Spinosaurus thrived on fish that others could not catch. In this way, it occupied a niche that balanced the ecosystem, a specialist among generalists, ensuring that the rivers teemed with life even as it fed upon them. And yet, the mastery of Spinosaurus was not absolute. Young individuals, smaller and less powerful, may have faced greater risk, forced to hunt cautiously in shallows where crocodilian threats were less severe. Their smaller size may have made them more vulnerable to terrestrial predators as well. Mastery had to be earned, step by step, as the young grew into their full size and claimed their place as lords of the rivers. The image of Spinosaurus as a master of rivers and lakes is both scientific and poetic. Fossil evidence tells us of its aquatic adaptations, but imagination allows us to picture its daily life: stalking, swimming, resting in the reeds and rising like a phantom from the depths. It was not merely a dinosaur that could swim, it was a predator whose body had become one with the rivers, a creature that blurred the boundary between land and water in a way no other theropod dared. And so, as we leave the rivers behind for now, we are left with a vivid picture: the sail rising above the current, the jaws closing on fish, the tail sweeping in powerful arcs. Spinosaurus was not simply present in the water, it was the water's master, a hunter whose very existence reshaped how we think about dinosaurs. But mastery in water came with a trade-off. On land, its proportions told a different story, one of awkwardness, of difficulty, of vulnerability. To understand the balance of Spinosaurus's life, we must follow it as it steps out of its watery kingdom and places its feet once more on solid ground. When we imagine the great predators of the Mesozoic, we often picture them striding confidently across open plains, their massive legs carrying them with unstoppable force. Tyrannosaurus rex, for example, was built for power on land, with towering hind limbs and a body balanced perfectly for forward motion. Carcharodontosaurus too was a creature of dry earth, stalking herds of sauropods with speed and precision. But Spinosaurus was different. Its body, so perfectly tuned for the water, told another story on land, one of compromise, of awkwardness, of a predator less at home among the reeds and forests than in the depths of rivers and lakes. To step onto solid ground was, for Spinosaurus, to enter a world that did not entirely fit its design. Its hind limbs were shorter than those of most theropods, stouter and less suited for long strides. Imagine its body low to the ground, its massive sail rising above like a living wall of bone and flesh. Each step was heavy, the claws of its feet pressing deep into the soft mud or sand of the riverbanks. Where other predators could lift their bodies with nimble ease, Spinosaurus moved with a slower, rolling gait. This is not to say it was weak. Even on land, Spinosaurus was a giant, and giants do not move without impact. Each footfall would have sent tremors through the earth, shaking reeds and startling smaller creatures into flight. Yet the rhythm of its movement was different, less the swift advance of a sprinter and more the deliberate trudge of a creature built for another world. Its center of gravity posed further challenges, with a long snout, extended torso, and that towering sail balancing its immense frame on shortened legs would not have been easy. Some paleontologists have suggested that Spinosaurus may have used its forelimbs more often than other theropods when on land, perhaps adopting a quadrupedal stance at times. Picture the beast lowering its body, its powerful arms bracing against the earth as it shifted forward, claws digging into the soil. It was not the upright predator we often imagine, but something stranger, a dinosaur walking a path between biped and quadruped, caught in transition. The claws of its forelimbs, curved and sharp, added to this image. They may have been used to stabilize the body as it moved across uneven ground, or to help drag its bulk up slippery riverbanks. On land, they became tools of support as much as weapons. The very features that made Spinosaurus so effective in water now defined its limitations on solid earth. But awkwardness did not mean helplessness. Even on land, Spinosaurus was still a predator over 15 meters long, with jaws that could crush fish or seize smaller dinosaurs. Imagine a herd of herbivorous iguanodonts grazing near the river. As they move to drink, the ground trembles. Spinosaurus has emerged from the shallows. Its approach is slower, less graceful than on water, but its sheer size is enough to send the herd scattering in panic. One young straggler lingers too long, and with a snap of jaws, Spinosaurus claims its prize. Yet, such hunts would not have been its preference. Pursuit on land was costly, dangerous even, for a body not built for speed. Each movement risked imbalance. Each chase risked exhaustion. Instead, Spinosaurus may have been an opportunist on land, scavenging carcasses, ambushing unwary prey that wandered too close to the water's edge, or dragging its aquatic kills onto the banks to feed in safety. In this way, it balanced its aquatic mastery with terrestrial necessity, never quite dominant on land, but never excluded from it either. The land held dangers of its own. Carcharodontosaurus, with its long legs and slicing teeth, was far better suited to life on the plains and forests. A confrontation between the two would likely favor Carcharodontosaurus on dry ground. For Spinosaurus, avoiding such encounters was a matter of survival. The river was its sanctuary, its fortress. On land, it was forced to negotiate, to use its size and intimidation rather than sheer speed or agility. Picture such an encounter. A carcass lies on the floodplain, the remains of a fallen sauropod. Spinosaurus approaches from the river, drawn by the smell of rotting flesh. Across the plain, Carcharodontosaurus also arrives, its head swaying as it surveys the prize. The two predators lock eyes, each one assessing the other. Spinosaurus raises its sail high, the structure gleaming in the sunlight, a warning display of size and strength. Carcharodontosaurus snarls, teeth flashing, but hesitates. On land, the odds favor it, but the risk of injury is high. For long minutes, the tension holds. In the end, perhaps both retreat, unwilling to gamble survival in a world already so perilous. Beyond predators, the land was also home to hazards of terrain. The wetlands of North Africa were treacherous, filled with shifting mud, deep silt, and hidden pools. A heavy-bodied creature like Spinosaurus risked becoming mired, trapped by its own weight. Imagine it slogging across a muddy floodplain, each step sinking deep, the suction of the earth pulling at its feet. To be caught here far from water was to be vulnerable. Smaller predators, crocodilians, or even scavengers might take advantage of such weakness. For this reason, Spinosaurus likely stayed close to its rivers and lakes, never straying far from the sanctuary of water. Still, land had its uses. It was here that nests were built, where eggs were laid in carefully scraped hollows or hidden among vegetation. Young Spinosauruses, no matter how aquatic their destiny, would have begun life on land. Their first steps were on soil, their earliest struggles beneath the sun rather than the river's surface. For them, land was both cradle and crucible, a place of danger and growth before they learned the mastery of water. The duality of Spinosaurus's life is striking. In water, it was graceful, efficient, and deadly. On land, it was slower, less balanced, yet still formidable. This tension defined its existence, shaping it into a creature unlike any other. Where most dinosaurs were creatures of a single world, Spinosaurus belonged to two, adapting to both, but mastering only one. And so we must imagine it not as a tyrant striding across plains, but as a wanderer of edges, a predator of boundaries. Its true power lay not in chasing prey across dry ground, but in lurking where land met water, where the unwary might step too close. Its role was that of an ambush hunter, a scavenger, a shadow moving between worlds. As the sun sets on the floodplain, the image is clear. Spinosaurus hauls itself from the river, water streaming from its sail and tail. Each step on land is deliberate, heavy yet purposeful. It drags its catch, a massive sawfish, onto the shore, laying it among the reeds. With a snap of jaws, it feeds, tearing flesh as the night gathers. Around it, the sounds of the floodplain swell, the calls of distant herbivores, the croak of giant frogs, the wing beats of pterosaurs overhead. Here on land, Spinosaurus is not king, but survivor, playing its part in the great balance of this ecosystem. And when it is finished, it turns back toward the river. Its body lowers, sliding into the water with relief as though returning home. The sail sinks, the ripples fade, and once again, Spinosaurus is where it belongs, not on the land, but beneath the surface where it reigns without equal. To understand Spinosaurus as a living creature, we must look closely at its diet. Food is the foundation of survival, shaping every adaptation, every behavior, every risk and decision an animal makes. For Spinosaurus, the rivers and lakes of Cretaceous North Africa provided a banquet of astonishing abundance, a feast of fish and aquatic creatures unlike anything else in the dinosaur world. It was a king of its realm, not through raw dominance alone, but because it claimed a food source that others could not. The jaws of Spinosaurus tell the first part of this story, long and narrow, lined with conical teeth. They were not designed for slicing flesh like the serrated blades of Carcharodontosaurus or Tyrannosaurus. Instead, they resembled the jaws of crocodiles and gharials, built for precision rather than destruction. The conical teeth interlocked when the jaws closed, forming a cage from which slippery prey could not escape. Imagine a wriggling fish, muscles straining, scales glistening in the sunlight. In the grip of those jaws, its movements would be futile, each twist met with unyielding pressure until it was swallowed whole. Fossil evidence supports this fish-eating lifestyle. Teeth of Spinosaurus have been found embedded in the fossilized remains of giant fish, such as Onchopristis, the sawfish whose snout bristled with jagged teeth. This is no coincidence. Spinosaurus hunted and consumed creatures that most predators could not handle, prey longer than a human, armed with weapons of their own. To take down such quarry, the predator needed not only strength but also adaptations fine-tuned to aquatic hunting. Its sensory pits, tiny depressions along the snout, reveal another clue. These structures, nearly identical to those of modern crocodilians, allowed Spinosaurus to detect minute vibrations in the water. With them, it could sense the movement of fish even in murky depths where sight was useless. Picture Spinosaurus standing motionless, its snout just above the surface, the rest of its body hidden in the reeds. The river is still, save for the faint pulse of movement beneath. Then, with unerring precision, the predator strikes, guided not by eyes but by the whispers of current and prey. The size of its prey varied enormously. Smaller fish were surely a staple, schools of swift, silvery swimmers snapped up in rapid succession, swallowed without chewing. But Spinosaurus was not limited to these. With a body over 15 meters long and jaws nearly 2 meters in length, it could tackle far larger meals. The massive coelacanth morsonia, armored and ancient, likely fell victim to its strikes. The lungfish, with its ability to breathe air, would have been vulnerable near the surface, where Spinosaurus could ambush it with a sudden lunge. And of course, the sawfish Onchopristis, though dangerous, was a worthy prize, providing enough meat to sustain even a giant. Isotopic analysis of Spinosaurus fossils adds weight to this picture. By studying the chemical signatures preserved in its teeth and bones, scientists have found evidence that Spinosaurus lived much like modern crocodiles and hippos, spending significant time in aquatic environments and feeding heavily on aquatic prey. Its very chemistry speaks of a life tied to the rivers, of meals drawn not from the plains but from the currents. Yet Spinosaurus was not exclusively a fish eater. No predator of such size can afford to ignore opportunity. While fish formed the core of its diet, it likely scavenged when the chance arose. A carcass of a fallen sauropod, half submerged in mud, would not have been wasted. Spinosaurus, with its powerful jaws and claws, could have torn strips of flesh, supplementing its diet when the rivers ran thin. Smaller dinosaurs, too, may have fallen prey if they strayed too close to the water's edge. Imagine a young iguanodont venturing to drink, unaware of the shadow beneath the surface. With a sudden explosion of spray, Spinosaurus surges forward, jaws snapping shut around its neck, dragging it thrashing into the depths. This opportunism reflects the reality of survival. The rivers were abundant, but no ecosystem is endless in its generosity. Floods could disrupt fish populations, droughts could lower rivers, competition from crocodilians could reduce hunting grounds. In such times, Spinosaurus's flexibility would have been crucial. It was not a tyrant limited to one strategy, but a pragmatist, a ruler willing to take what the world offered. Its feeding behavior must also be imagined in terms of energy. A creature of such immensity needed vast amounts of food to sustain itself. Each day, it may have required hundreds of kilograms of meat or fish. Schools of smaller fish could provide bursts of energy, but larger prey offered the efficiency of a single massive meal. This may explain why it targeted creatures like Onchopristis or Morsonia, dangerous but rewarding, their size matching the needs of a giant hunter. The act of feeding itself must have been dramatic. Picture Spinosaurus lunging into a shoal of sawfish, jaws snapping shut with a thunderous crack. The river explodes into chaos as water churns, fins thrash and scales scatter like shards of glass. With a twist of its neck, Spinosaurus lifts its prey high, blood dripping into the current before slamming it back into the water to subdue it. Then, with a massive gulp, the fish disappears down its throat, the predator's sail swaying as it swallows. But not every hunt ended in triumph. Prey could fight back. The sawfish's snout, swung in desperation, could gouge deep wounds. A coelacanth's armored scales could resist a bite. Even small prey could escape in the confusion of a strike. Hunger was a constant presence, and failure as much a part of the hunt as success. For Spinosaurus, mastery did not mean ease. It meant persistence, adaptation, and the willingness to risk injury for reward. What makes its diet so fascinating is how it sets Spinosaurus apart from other theropods. Most carnivorous dinosaurs relied on land animals, herbivores of varying sizes, as their prey. Their bodies, teeth, and behaviors reflected this. But Spinosaurus had stepped into a new niche, one few others dared to occupy. By feeding on aquatic life, it reduced direct competition, carving out a space where it alone reigned. It was a predator that thought differently, one that followed the currents rather than the herds. This difference reshaped its entire existence. Its daily rhythm was dictated not by the migrations of herbivores but by the patterns of rivers. Its battles were not always with rival theropods but with crocodilians lurking below the surface. Its survival depended not on chasing prey across plains but on patience, precision, and the ability to sense the faintest tremor in the water. Its diet defined it as surely as its sail or its tail. To see Spinosaurus feeding is to glimpse the heart of its life. In the morning, it may have stood still in shallow water, plucking fish one by one from passing schools. By afternoon, it may have lunged into deeper channels, pursuing larger prey with bursts of power. At dusk, it may have dragged its catch onto the banks, tearing it apart while pterosaurs circled above, waiting for scraps. Each moment was part of the endless cycle of hunger and satisfaction, risk and reward, survival and dominance. And yet, for all its adaptations, Spinosaurus lived in a world of constant challenge. Food was abundant, but so were rivals. Crocodilians, pterosaurs, even other theropods could contest its meals. To keep its throne as the River King, it needed not only to hunt well, but to defend what it caught. Its diet was not simply about feeding, it was about survival in a kingdom where abundance and danger were two sides of the same coin. As we leave Spinosaurus in its riverside feast, we see more than a predator. We see an animal shaped by its food, by the fish that swam its waters, by the carcasses that drifted to its shores, by the hunger that drove every strike. Its reign as the River King was not born of cruelty or spectacle, but of adaptation, of finding a way to thrive where others could not. And yet, even kings must fight to keep their crowns. Having explored what Spinosaurus ate, we must now turn to how it defended its place in this perilous world. The conflicts, the struggles, and the dangers it faced from rivals and from the environment itself. Survival in the Cretaceous was never guaranteed. For all its immense size and aquatic mastery, Spinosaurus lived in a world where danger lurked in every shadow, where storms could sweep away entire ecosystems, and where rivals as powerful as itself prowled the same floodplains. To be the River King was to live in constant conflict, not only with other predators but with the forces of nature itself. One of the most dangerous adversaries Spinosaurus faced was Carcharodontosaurus, the blade-toothed giant that ruled the land. At over 12 meters in length and armed with serrated teeth capable of slicing through flesh like knives, it was among the most formidable theropods ever to live. Its hunting grounds overlapped with the floodplains where Spinosaurus came ashore, and though their diets differed, the competition between them was inevitable. Imagine the scene. A carcass lies half submerged in the mud, the body of a young paralititan brought low by illness or accident. The scent of decay carries across the wind, drawing predators from miles around. From the river, Spinosaurus emerges, water dripping from its sail, nostrils flaring with the smell of meat. From the plains, Carcharodontosaurus approaches, head swaying side to side, its eyes locked on the same prize. The confrontation is immediate. Spinosaurus raises its sail, a living banner of intimidation, hissing and bellowing as it tries to claim the carcass. Carcharodontosaurus snarls in return, its serrated teeth flashing in the light. For minutes that feel like hours, the two giants posture, neither eager to risk injury. Then perhaps the clash comes, jaws snapping, claws slashing, tails lashing the ground. Dust rises, water churns, and the cries of the combatants echo across the floodplain. In such battles, victory was never certain. On land, Carcharodontosaurus's longer legs and slicing jaws may have given it the advantage. In the shallows, Spinosaurus's strength and aquatic adaptations could turn the tide. More often than not, the battle may have ended in a stalemate, with one predator retreating rather than risking crippling wounds. For in this world, even the smallest injury could mean death, infection, or the slow weakening that left a giant vulnerable to scavengers. Nor were rivals limited to other dinosaurs. The rivers themselves were home to titans like Sarcosuchus, the supercroc, a predator nearly as long as Spinosaurus itself. Ambush was its weapon. Hidden just beneath the surface, its eyes and nostrils barely breaking the water, it could wait for hours in silence. When prey wandered too close, its jaws snapped shut with bone-crushing force. Even a Spinosaurus, immense as it was, would have been at risk if caught unawares. Picture a young Spinosaurus, still learning the rhythms of its river. It wades too deep, distracted by the darting shapes of fish. Suddenly, the water erupts. A Sarcosuchus lunges upward, its jaws closing around the dinosaur's hind leg. The river explodes in thrashing chaos, spray flying into the air as predator and prey struggle in a deadly embrace. With a desperate roar, the Spinosaurus lashes out with its claws, slashing at its attacker, while its massive tail whips the water into foam. The fight is brutal, uncertain, and for the young Spinosaurus, survival is not guaranteed. Even for adults, Sarcosuchus represented a threat. An ambush from below, perfectly timed, could leave even the largest predator wounded. And in a world where survival was already precarious, a wound was more dangerous than any single battle. Infection, blood loss, weakness. These were the true killers, silent and relentless. Beyond rivals, the environment itself posed constant trials. The climate of Cretaceous North Africa was hot, humid, and prone to extremes. Seasonal floods could transform gentle rivers into raging torrents, sweeping away everything in their path. Imagine a Spinosaurus caught in one of these deluges, its sail rising above the foaming waters as it struggled to maintain control. Trees, carcasses, and boulders rushed past in the current, each one a potential hazard. Survival depended on strength, endurance, and sometimes sheer luck. Then came the dry seasons. As rivers shrank and lakes receded, fish became concentrated in smaller pools, making them easier to catch but also increasing competition. Predators gathered at the shrinking waterholes, eyes locked on one another as much as on the prey. Tensions ran high, and battles for territory and food became more frequent. For Spinosaurus, the feast of abundance could turn into a war of scarcity, a reminder that even kings could be tested by the whims of nature. Conflict was not always with giants. Smaller predators like Deltadromeus, swift and agile, could harass young Spinosauruses or scavenge from their kills. Pterosaurs circled above, waiting to snatch scraps the moment the giant turned its head. Even fish could fight back. A sawfish's snout, swung in desperation, could slice flesh and leave wounds that festered. To live as a Spinosaurus was to face opposition at every scale, from the smallest opportunist to the largest rival. And yet, Spinosaurus endured. Its body bore the marks of conflict, scars on bone, teeth broken in battles, spines healed after injury. Fossils tell us that many dinosaurs survived injuries that would cripple modern animals, their bodies resilient beyond expectation. Spinosaurus too must have carried such scars, each one a testament to its survival in a world that offered no mercy. But not all conflict was violent. Some was strategic, a matter of choosing when to fight and when to yield. Spinosaurus may have relied on intimidation as much as on actual combat. Its sail towering above the reeds could serve as a warning to rivals. This stretch of river is mine. Its sheer size, its deep bellows, its dominance in water, these may have discouraged many challengers before a battle even began. For in a world of giants, sometimes the greatest victory was to avoid the fight entirely. Survival also meant resilience against the smaller everyday trials, disease, parasites, injuries from hunting. All these chipped away at the strength of a predator. A broken tooth, a twisted claw, a torn muscle. Each small setback was a reminder that mastery was never absolute. To survive, Spinosaurus had to endure not just the dramatic battles but the slow wear of life itself. And through it all, Spinosaurus persisted. For millions of years it lived and thrived in its rivers, outlasting rivals, enduring floods and droughts, carving out a niche so unique that no other dinosaur ever quite matched it. Its survival was not the triumph of a flawless creature, but of one that adapted, that endured conflict after conflict, that bent but did not break under the pressures of its world. As we picture Spinosaurus in these moments of struggle, clashing with Carcharodontosaurus, fighting off Sarcosuchus, braving storms and floods, we see not just a predator but a survivor, a creature that lived in balance with danger, constantly negotiating its place among giants, constantly adapting to the challenges of its environment. And yet, survival was not only a matter for adults. Every giant began life as something small, fragile, and vulnerable. To understand the story of Spinosaurus, we must turn our attention to the very beginning of its journey, to the eggs in their nests, to the hatchlings that would one day grow into river kings. Every giant begins small. For all its power and scale, Spinosaurus started life no larger than a hatchling crocodile, fragile and untested in a world filled with danger. Its story did not begin with the crash of jaws or the thrashing of fish in the river, but in the stillness of a nest hidden along the banks of ancient waterways, where the future kings of the river emerged from eggs laid in mud and sand. Picture the scene. The air is thick with heat, cicadas buzzing in the trees, dragonflies darting above reeds that sway gently in the breeze. At the edge of the floodplain, in a patch of soft soil warmed by the sun, a clutch of eggs lies buried. Each egg is about the size of a football, its shell speckled and strong, yet delicate enough to be broken by the life stirring within. The nest is carefully placed, high enough to avoid seasonal floods, hidden among vegetation to shield it from prying eyes. Here, Spinosaurus mothers entrusted the next generation to the earth. But safety was never guaranteed. Eggs were treasures in the Cretaceous world, sought after by predators of every size: small mammals, opportunistic lizards, even other dinosaurs prowled for such easy meals. The scent of eggs carried far on the wind, and the slightest slip in concealment could mean the end of an entire brood. Perhaps the parents guarded the nests, their massive bodies lurking nearby, their sails visible above the reeds as a warning. Or perhaps they, like many reptiles today, left their young to fate, trusting that sheer numbers would ensure a few survived. In truth, we cannot know for certain, but what is clear is that hatching was only the first hurdle in a life filled with challenges. The moment of birth was a struggle of its own. Inside the egg, the tiny Spinosaurus hatchling, still curled and fragile, pressed against the shell with its snout, using a specialized tooth to break free. Hours, perhaps even days, were spent in this exhausting effort, until at last cracks spread across the surface, and the young dinosaur emerged into the light of the Cretaceous sun. Its body was covered in soft skin, its limbs thin and awkward, its sail little more than a faint ridge along its back. Its jaws were already lined with tiny conical teeth, miniature versions of the tools that would one day seize fish longer than its body. From the moment of hatching, danger surrounded the hatchlings. They were small enough to be snatched up by predatory fish, crocodilians, or even large birds and pterosaurs. On land, prowling mammals or swift theropods could easily pick them off. For the young Spinosaurus, survival meant speed, stealth, and luck. They darted through reeds, slipped into shallow pools, and learned quickly that the world was not kind to the small. Perhaps their earliest days were spent in the shallows, where the water was too thin for Sarcosuchus, but deep enough to hide them from land-based hunters. Here they could feed on insects, small amphibians, and tiny fish, building strength day by day. Their bodies grew rapidly, fueled by the abundance of food, yet every stage of growth brought new risks, too large for some predators, but still too small to challenge others. They lived in a precarious in-between state for years. Growth for Spinosaurus was astonishingly fast. Within a few years, the hatchling doubled, then tripled in size. Its sail grew taller, its jaws lengthened, its limbs thickened. By adolescence, it was already larger than most predators of its world, though still vulnerable to giants like Carcharodontosaurus or adult Sarcosuchus. Imagine a juvenile perhaps 6 meters long, stalking fish along a riverbank to smaller animals. It was already a terror, yet in the presence of adults it was dwarfed, its sail half-formed, its movements clumsy compared to the fluid grace of its elders. The path from hatchling to adult was a gauntlet of survival. Each year winnowed the numbers, with floods, droughts, disease, and predators taking their toll. Only a few would survive to maturity, reaching the immense size that made them nearly untouchable. Those that did, however, would dominate their rivers for decades, their bodies carrying the marks of every trial overcome. Social behavior among young Spinosauruses is another mystery. Did siblings stay together for a time, forming small groups for safety, as some crocodiles do today, or did they scatter quickly, each one fending for itself in a harsh and unforgiving environment? Fossil evidence is too fragmentary to give a certainty, but it is possible that early cooperation, even for a short time, improved their odds. Imagine a cluster of young Spinosauruses, their sails still small ridges, moving together through reeds, snapping up fish and insects, their movements synchronized by instinct. To a predator, they would still be vulnerable, but perhaps numbers provided a measure of protection. Parental care remains equally uncertain. Some scientists suggest that, like modern crocodiles, adult Spinosauruses may have guarded their nests, using their immense size to deter would-be egg thieves. Others argue that they laid their eggs and left, as many reptiles do, investing nothing further. If the latter was true, then hatchlings faced the world alone from the very start, their survival dependent solely on instinct and chance. If the former, then young Spinosauruses may have lingered near their parents, sheltered under the shadow of the sail until they were large enough to fend for themselves. Regardless of parental care, the mortality rate must have been staggering. Of dozens of eggs laid, perhaps only 1 or 2 ever reached adulthood. This is the strategy of many reptiles to overwhelm predators with sheer numbers, ensuring that even if most are lost, the species endures. For Spinosaurus, this meant that the rivers and wetlands of North Africa were filled with young, vulnerable individuals darting through shallows, hiding in reeds, and constantly at risk. They were prey before they became predators, hunted before they could hunt. But those that survived grew into something extraordinary. Each passing year brought greater size, greater strength, and greater mastery of the river. The conical teeth sharpened into tools for gripping larger fish. The tail broadened into a powerful paddle. The sail stretched higher, its spines thickening with age. The awkward movements of a hatchling gave way to the deliberate grace of an aquatic giant. By the time a Spinosaurus reached maturity, it had overcome countless trials, each one etched into its body as scars or strength. The survivor that emerged was not just an accident of luck, but a product of resilience, of instincts honed by millions of years of evolution, of a life forged in danger and hardship. And so, when we think of Spinosaurus, we must not only picture the adult, the master of rivers, the hunter of fish, the giant with a sail that towered above the floodplains. We must also imagine the fragile hatchling, breaking free from its egg in a nest by the water, its first breath a gasp in a world already filled with threats. Its journey from that moment to adulthood was as dramatic as any battle between giants, a story of survival repeated generation after generation for millions of years. In the end, the young of Spinosaurus remind us that even the greatest predators begin small, that the path to mastery is one of struggle, and that survival itself is the greatest victory. And with this image of fragile beginnings, we turn now to the larger canvas of the world they inhabited. What kind of environment nurtured such giants, shaped their lives, and tested their survival? To answer this, we must step back and look not only at the animals but at the landscapes themselves. The rivers, the floods, the forests, and the shifting climates of Cretaceous North Africa. To truly understand Spinosaurus, we must step beyond its sail and jaws and consider the world it lived in. The Cretaceous period was a time of transformation, a world in motion both in the lives of its creatures and in the very landscapes they inhabited. For Spinosaurus, the backdrop to its existence was one of rivers swelling and shrinking, climates shifting, seas advancing and retreating. It was not a static kingdom, but a living, breathing environment in constant transition. Let us begin with the climate. North Africa in the mid-Cretaceous was far different from the deserts we know today. Instead of endless dunes, this land was a lush mosaic of wetlands, river deltas, and floodplains. Warm and humid, the air carried moisture that fed dense vegetation and supported an abundance of life. Seasonal rains swelled rivers into sprawling waterways, while dry spells left behind oxbow lakes and muddy flats. This alternation between wet and dry created a landscape of extremes, a cycle of abundance and scarcity that shaped the creatures who lived there. The rivers themselves were the heart of this world. Fed by distant rains and shifting tectonic forces, they carved their way across the land, branching into countless channels and lagoons. Each bend, each pool, became a micro-ecosystem teeming with life. Some waters ran clear and shallow, filled with darting schools of small fish. Others were deep and murky, their surfaces calm but their depths hiding giants. To walk along these rivers was to encounter a constant interplay between stillness and movement, between calm reflections and sudden eruptions of violence, as predators struck from below. The vegetation mirrored this abundance. Towering conifers and cycads lined the riverbanks, their roots anchoring soil against floods. Ferns spread in thick carpets, their fronds curling beneath the canopy. Flowering plants, still newcomers in evolutionary history, were beginning to diversify, painting the floodplains with new colors and attracting insects that buzzed and hummed through the air. Dragonflies with wingspans wider than a man's hand hovered over ponds, while beetles scurried beneath damp logs. Each plant and insect was part of a growing web of life, a foundation upon which giants like Spinosaurus depended. The skies above were no less alive. Pterosaurs wheeled in the air, their wings catching thermals as they scanned the waters for prey. Some were small, no larger than modern seabirds, while others stretched wingspans rivaling small airplanes. They dived into rivers to snatch fish, squabbled over carcasses, and followed giants like Spinosaurus in hopes of stealing scraps. Their cries filled the air, blending with the rumble of storms and the calls of dinosaurs on the ground. Beneath the surface, the rivers told another story, one of diversity and scale almost unimaginable. Sawfish, coelacanths, lungfish, and sharks swam side by side, their bodies adapted to a world where predators pressed from every angle. Some carried armor of thick scales, others relied on speed, and some, like lungfish, used the very air to survive when waters dwindled. These creatures were not passive prey but active participants in the balance of the ecosystem, shaping the strategies and adaptations of predators like Spinosaurus. The larger landscape, too, was one of transition. Sea levels in the mid-Cretaceous were among the highest in Earth's history. Vast shallow seas advanced inland, flooding low-lying regions and transforming plains into coastal wetlands. North Africa was no exception. Where once there had been dry land, estuaries and deltas spread, creating environments perfectly suited for a semi-aquatic giant. The very geography of the continent carved out the niche that Spinosaurus came to dominate. But such transitions were not without challenge. As seas advanced and retreated, ecosystems shifted, rivers changed course, stranding fish in drying pools and forcing predators to adapt or starve. Floods could destroy nesting grounds, while droughts could concentrate life into shrinking refuges, intensifying competition. For Spinosaurus, mastery of water was not a luxury but a necessity. Its survival depended on its ability to navigate a world that never stood still. In this shifting environment, other creatures found their own roles. Sauropods, like Paralititan, grazed the floodplains, their immense size shaping vegetation and leaving behind trails that altered the flow of water. Smaller herbivores clustered in groups, ever wary of predators lurking in the reeds. Predators like Carcharodontosaurus stalked the edges of this world, while crocodilian giants waited in ambush. Each species was a thread in the tapestry, its existence woven into the whole, its fate tied to the cycles of flood and drought, abundance and scarcity. Imagine the change of seasons. During the wet months, rivers swell beyond their banks, flooding forests and spreading across the land in a shimmering sheet of water. Spinosaurus glides through these new channels, its sail breaking the surface as it hunts in temporary lakes that teem with fish. For a time, abundance reigns. Prey is plentiful, competition diffused across wide waters, and predators thrive. But as the dry season advances, the rivers shrink, channels narrow, pools grow stagnant, and fish crowd into the remaining water. The air grows heavy with the smell of decay as carcasses line the banks, victims of heat and scarcity. Spinosaurus lingers in these shrinking pools, its dominance magnified as prey has fewer places to hide. Yet competition also intensifies. Crocodilians gather, smaller predators encroach, and even giants may clash over dwindling resources. The same cycles that grant abundance also demand struggle, a rhythm that shaped the very character of Spinosaurus. The world of Spinosaurus was also one of deep time. Continents were drifting, seas rising, climates warming. What was once a lush wetland would over millions of years transform into the Sahara Desert we know today, a barren expanse where the bones of giants now lie buried beneath endless sand. This transformation reminds us that even the mightiest creatures are bound by the shifting hand of Earth itself, their kingdoms temporary, their dominance fleeting in the face of geological change. And yet, within this world of transition, Spinosaurus thrived for millions of years. Its adaptations, the long snout, the conical teeth, the dense bones, the paddle-like tail, were answers to the challenges of this landscape. Where others faltered, it flourished. It was not simply a predator. It was a product of its environment, its very form sculpted by the rivers, the floods, the fish, and the shifting seas. To stand in that world, to feel the humidity pressing on your skin, to hear the rumble of distant thunder, to see the sail of Spinosaurus rising above the reeds, would be to witness a place in motion, a place alive with transformation. Every day brought change, every season a new challenge, every year a reshaping of the land, and through it all, Spinosaurus endured, its life a mirror of the world it inhabited, fluid, shifting, resilient. As we leave this vision of Cretaceous North Africa, we are reminded that no kingdom lasts forever. For all its mastery, for all its adaptations, Spinosaurus too would eventually disappear, claimed by the same forces of change that once shaped its rise. To understand its fate, we must look to the twilight of its reign, to the mysteries of its extinction, and the silence it left behind. For millions of years, Spinosaurus reigned as the master of rivers and lakes, a predator unlike any other in Earth's history. It thrived in the waterways of Cretaceous North Africa, fed on an endless bounty of fish, and grew to lengths greater than any other carnivorous dinosaur. Yet, like all dynasties, its reign came to an end. The sail that once cut the horizon, the jaws that once gripped armored fish, the tail that once propelled it through rivers, all vanished into silence. What became of this extraordinary giant? Why did the River King fall? Extinction is rarely a single event. It is not always marked by fire and fury, though sometimes it is. More often it is the accumulation of changes, shifts in climate, in ecosystems, in food webs, that slowly erode the foundations of survival. For Spinosaurus, its disappearance was likely the product of many forces converging, a web of pressures that even its unique adaptations could not withstand. One of the first factors to consider is environmental change. The mid-Cretaceous world was one of high seas, warm climates, and shifting landscapes. North Africa, once a lush wetland paradise, began to transform over time. Rising and falling sea levels reshaped rivers and deltas, while climatic shifts altered rainfall patterns. The waterways that had once teemed with fish may have dwindled or shifted course, leaving Spinosaurus with fewer hunting grounds. Imagine a river shrinking season by season, its channels drying, its bounty of fish fading away. For a creature so dependent on aquatic prey, such changes would have been devastating. Another possibility lies in the availability of prey. The fossil record tells us that Spinosaurus relied heavily on fish such as Onchopristis, Morsonia, and other giant river dwellers. But ecosystems are fragile, and when one link in the chain is broken, others soon follow. If fish populations declined, whether due to climatic shifts, competition, or environmental upheaval, Spinosaurus would have faced starvation. Its specialized body, so finely tuned to catching aquatic prey, may have left it less adaptable when those resources dwindled. Where generalist predators might shift their diets, Spinosaurus's long snout and conical teeth bound it to the rivers. Its greatest strength became its greatest weakness. We must also consider competition. Spinosaurus did not live alone. It shared its world with formidable predators like Carcharodontosaurus and Sarcosuchus. Though their diets overlapped only partially, times of scarcity could have intensified conflict. Imagine a drought-stricken season where fish are scarce and carcasses are contested at the water's edge. Spinosaurus, awkward on land, would have been at a disadvantage compared to Carcharodontosaurus. Its semi-aquatic nature gave it mastery in water, but when rivers dried or prey grew scarce, it may have found itself squeezed out by more versatile hunters. Disease and injury also played their roles, as they always do in the story of extinction. A wound from a rival's bite, a broken limb, or a gash from a sawfish's snout could spell the end for an individual. On a larger scale, epidemics may have swept through populations of prey, or even among Spinosaurus itself. Fossil evidence cannot easily capture such invisible killers, but the possibility lingers, reminding us that survival was fragile even for giants. Beyond these gradual pressures, there is the looming spectre of the end Cretaceous extinction, the cataclysm 66 million years ago that wiped out most of the dinosaurs. But Spinosaurus may not have survived even to that final act. Fossil evidence suggests that Spinosaurus lived around 95 million years ago, long before the asteroid impact that marked the end of the Mesozoic. If so, its disappearance came earlier, during a quieter, slower decline driven not by sudden disaster, but by the relentless hand of change. This raises another mystery. Did Spinosaurus vanish entirely, or did it linger in pockets, clinging to survival in isolated waterways as its world changed around it? Perhaps small populations endured for longer than we know, their presence lost to the gaps in the fossil record. Extinction, after all, is not always clean or sudden. It can be a slow fade, a dwindling of numbers until a species becomes a shadow, unseen, unrecorded, and then gone. Part of the mystery lies in the nature of the fossil record itself. Fossils of Spinosaurus are rare, fragmented, and scattered. Much of what we know comes from incomplete remains, often found in riverbeds or quarries where erosion and time have broken them apart. It is possible that our picture of its extinction is blurred not by lack of answers but by lack of evidence. Did it die out suddenly, in response to a major event, or did it decline gradually, until only silence remained? Without more fossils, the questions remain open, and perhaps they always will. What makes the extinction of Spinosaurus so compelling is that it mirrors the fragility of specialization. In its prime, it was unmatched, a predator uniquely adapted to its watery niche. But specialization can be a double-edged sword. When the world shifts, when rivers dry or prey disappears, those who rely too heavily on a single way of life can find themselves without options. Spinosaurus was an innovator, a pioneer among dinosaurs, but innovation does not guarantee permanence. Evolution rewards adaptability, and when the environment demanded change, Spinosaurus may have found itself unable to respond quickly enough. And yet, its legacy is not one of failure. For millions of years, Spinosaurus thrived. It grew larger than any other carnivorous dinosaur, mastered a niche no other theropod dared, and reigned as king of the rivers. Its extinction was not the mark of weakness, but of the relentless truth that no reign lasts forever. All species, no matter how mighty, are bound by the cycles of Earth, cycles of rise and fall, abundance and scarcity, life and death. As we reflect on its disappearance, we are left with an image both haunting and humbling. Picture the final days of Spinosaurus. The rivers run lower than before, the fish fewer, the air is heavy with heat, the calls of rivals echo in the distance. A solitary Spinosaurus stands in the shallows, its sail rising above the reeds, its eyes scanning waters that no longer teem with life as they once did. Each strike at prey is slower, less certain. Each season grows harder, and then one day there are no more. The rivers flow on, the land shifts, and the king of the waters fades into memory, leaving only bones to tell its story. Extinction is not simply an ending, it is also a transformation, a handover of the stage from one set of players to the next. When Spinosaurus vanished, the rivers did not fall silent. New predators arose, new prey filled the currents, new ecosystems blossomed in the wake of change. Life continued as it always does, adapting and evolving in endless cycles. Spinosaurus may have disappeared, but the rivers it ruled carried its memory forward in the evolution of countless other species. And today, millions of years later, its bones lie beneath the sands of the Sahara, relics of a vanished world. From these fragments we piece together its life and ponder its death. The mystery of its extinction lingers not because it diminishes Spinosaurus, but because it elevates it. It reminds us that even the greatest creatures are subject to the forces of Earth, that survival is never guaranteed, and that the story of life is written as much in endings as in beginnings. As we leave behind the question of its extinction, we turn next to the story of its rediscovery, the way its bones re-emerged from the sands, the debates they ignited, and how, even in death, Spinosaurus continues to challenge and reshape our understanding of dinosaurs. The story of Spinosaurus is as much about us as it is about the animal itself. For millions of years after its extinction, its bones lay buried beneath layers of rock and sand, hidden in the Earth's memory. When Ernst Stromer uncovered its remains in Egypt in the early 1900s, the world first glimpsed this strange predator. But fate was cruel. Those fossils were destroyed during World War II, leaving only Stromer's sketches and notes as proof of what he had seen. For decades afterwards, Spinosaurus became a ghost in paleontology, a name without a body, a creature known only by fragments and imagination. And then, like the river that suddenly reveals a long-hidden stone, Spinosaurus returned. In the deserts of Morocco during the late 20th and early 21st centuries, fossil hunters uncovered new remains. At first, they were scattered bones, vertebrae here, a snout fragment there, teeth weathered from ancient sediments. Each discovery added a piece to the puzzle, yet the picture remained incomplete. Was Spinosaurus truly the aquatic hunter Stromer had hinted at, or was it simply another land-based giant with a strange sail? The debates began almost immediately. Early reconstructions painted Spinosaurus as a colossal theropod, striding across floodplains like a crocodile-shaped Tyrannosaurus. Its sail rose like a fin across its back, and artists imagined it as a desert wanderer, its silhouette framed against arid horizons. For years, this vision dominated books and museum displays. Children memorized its name, fascinated by its sail, but the idea of it living in rivers was rarely entertained. That changed in the early 21st century, when paleontologists uncovered fossils that challenged everything we thought we knew. Among the most significant was the discovery of Spinosaurus's tail. Unlike the narrow, rigid tails of most theropods, this one was broad, paddle-like and flexible, a structure far better suited for swimming than for balance on land. Suddenly, the image of Spinosaurus shifted. No longer a desert prowler, it became a river giant, gliding through currents like a reptilian crocodile on an immense scale. The revelation sent ripples through paleontology. Could it be that one of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs was not primarily a land hunter at all, but an aquatic predator? If so, Spinosaurus rewrote the rules of what dinosaurs could be. For decades, dinosaurs had been imagined as creatures of land and sky. Birds carried their lineage into the air, but the water was considered the realm of reptiles like crocodiles and marine giants like mosasaurs. Spinosaurus defied that division, standing as proof that dinosaurs too could rule the rivers. Not everyone agreed. Some paleontologists argued that while Spinosaurus showed aquatic adaptations, it may not have been a strong swimmer. Its body proportions, short hind limbs, long torso, immense sail, raised questions. Could such a creature truly maneuver through water with efficiency, or was it more of a wader, standing in shallows and ambushing fish like a heron. The debate continues, with evidence drawn from bone density, tail flexibility, and isotopic studies of its chemistry. Bone density proved especially important. Spinosaurus's bones were unusually heavy, lacking the hollow structure seen in many theropods. This trait matched animals that spend much of their lives in water, like hippos, whose weight helps them sink and move beneath the surface. Combined with its crocodile-like snout and paddle tail, the evidence leaned strongly toward a semi-aquatic lifestyle. Yet questions remained about just how much time it spent submerged and how far it could travel in rivers or coastal seas. The sail, too, fueled debate. Was it a display structure, a heat regulator, a stabilizer in water, or something else entirely? Fossil evidence cannot yet provide a definitive answer, and so paleontologists argue from analogy and biomechanics. Some point to fish with extended dorsal fins, using them for stability or mating displays. Others emphasize that the sheer size of the sail suggests multiple functions. In truth, the sail may have been versatile, a tool that shifted in purpose depending on circumstance, a billboard, a radiator, and a keel all at once. The rediscovery of Spinosaurus also highlighted the fragility of science itself. For decades, Stromer's careful work had been dismissed or doubted, overshadowed by the loss of his fossils. Only with modern discoveries did his insights gain new weight, proving that he had been right to sense the uniqueness of this predator. In this way, Spinosaurus became not only a story of paleontology, but a story of redemption, of science delayed but not denied, of truth resurfacing after nearly a century of obscurity. And yet, rediscovery brought with it new challenges. Fossils from Morocco often surfaced through commercial digs, collected by local fossil hunters, and sold into global markets. While these discoveries expanded our knowledge, they also raised questions about provenance, about the integrity of specimens, and about the ethics of fossil trade. For Spinosaurus, whose skeleton remains incomplete even now, the issue of scattered fossils complicates its reconstruction. Each new bone must be carefully verified, compared, and placed into context. The picture we build is always provisional, always open to revision. This uncertainty has fueled debate not only in scientific journals but in the public imagination. Spinosaurus has become a symbol of how science evolves, how each discovery reshapes the narrative, how evidence builds, how theories clash and resolve. One decade it is a desert giant, the next a river hunter. One moment it walks tall on two legs, the next it ambles awkwardly on all fours. The truth is not fixed but shifting like the rivers it once patrolled. And perhaps that is what makes Spinosaurus so captivating. It is not simply a dinosaur, it is a mystery in motion. Its rediscovery shows us that science is not a collection of final answers, but a process of questions, debates, and revelations. Each fossil is not the end of a story, but the beginning of a new chapter, a piece of evidence that forces us to look again, to ask again, to wonder again. Imagine standing in a modern museum, gazing at the reconstructed skeleton of Spinosaurus. Its sail rises above you like a jagged mountain. Its jaws stretch forward in a crocodilian grin. Its tail arches with the sweep of a swimmer. Yet around the skeleton are placards filled with caveats, diagrams showing alternative reconstructions, notes about missing pieces. You realize that you are not looking at a finished portrait, but at an evolving sketch, a story still being written. That is the beauty of Spinosaurus. It refuses to be pinned down even in death. For all the debate, one truth has become clear. Spinosaurus was unique. No other dinosaur combined its features. No other predator claimed its niche, whether it swam like a crocodile or waded like a heron, whether its sail dazzled rivals or stabilized its strokes. Spinosaurus stood apart. Its rediscovery has not only deepened our understanding of one species, but has expanded our vision of what dinosaurs could be. And so, the debates continue. Scientists argue over body proportions, over hunting strategies, over sail function and swimming ability. New fossils emerge, each one shifting the balance of interpretation. The River King refuses to give up all its secrets, reminding us that even in the age of modern science, mystery endures. As we leave this section of rediscovery and debate, we carry with us not certainty but wonder. Spinosaurus lives again, not only in the bones pulled from Moroccan quarries, but in the questions it inspires, in the conversations it sparks, in the reminder that science itself is a river, winding, shifting, always moving forward. And now, as we near the close of our journey, we turn to legacy. Beyond fossils, beyond debates, what does Spinosaurus mean to us today? How has it shaped our imagination? And why does it endure as one of the most extraordinary creatures ever to walk and swim the earth? Legacies are not measured only in bones or in the marks left upon stone. They are measured in memory, in imagination, in the stories that echo long after the creature itself has vanished. Spinosaurus, the sail-backed hunter of rivers, is one such creature whose legacy transcends its own time. Though it disappeared 95 million years ago, its shadow still looms over our understanding of dinosaurs, reshaping how we think of them and inspiring wonder in every new generation that encounters its name. The first part of its legacy lies in science itself. Few dinosaurs have forced paleontologists to rethink so much so often. From Stromer's early discovery in Egypt to the dramatic loss of those fossils during World War II, Spinosaurus became a symbol of how fragile our knowledge can be. For decades, it remained a ghost, known only by sketches and scattered fragments. Yet the rediscovery of new fossils in Morocco not only revived its story, but overturned long-held assumptions about what dinosaurs could be. Before Spinosaurus, theropods were imagined almost exclusively as land-bound hunters, ruling plains and forests with their speed and jaws. Spinosaurus shattered that image. Its adaptations for water, the crocodile-like snout, the heavy bones, the paddle-shaped tail, proved that dinosaurs could invade and dominate aquatic environments as well. It was a revelation, a reminder that evolution does not follow our neat categories. Dinosaurs were not simply rulers of land and air. Some, like Spinosaurus, ruled the water too. This scientific legacy continues to unfold. Each new fossil, each new analysis, adds to the ongoing debate about its body, its behavior, and its world. Was it primarily aquatic, spending most of its life submerged, or was it a wader straddling the shallows? Did its sail serve multiple purposes at once? Display, thermoregulation, stability, or was it specialized for just one? These questions drive research forward, ensuring that Spinosaurus remains not just a chapter in paleontology, but a living conversation. Beyond science, Spinosaurus has also left a profound legacy in human imagination. Few dinosaurs capture the mind quite like it. Tyrannosaurus may be the king of pop culture, and Velociraptor may thrill with its cunning, but Spinosaurus intrigues with its strangeness. Its crocodile-like jaws, towering sail, and semi-aquatic nature set it apart, giving it an almost mythical aura. It looks less like something we expect a dinosaur to be, and more like a creature from dreams or legends, as if it had stepped from a storybook into reality. This uniqueness has made Spinosaurus a staple of documentaries, books, and films. Children learn its name early, drawn to its sail and its reputation as one of the largest carnivores ever to live. In popular culture, it is often portrayed as a rival to Tyrannosaurus, sometimes imagined as even more fearsome because of its size. In reality, the two never met. Tyrannosaurus lived in North America millions of years later, yet the imagined rivalry endures, a testament to how Spinosaurus has captured collective imagination. Its sail, especially, has become iconic. Artists depict it in countless ways, blazing red in courtship displays, striped with patterns like a tiger's, or glowing in the sun as it rises from the water. Each portrayal adds to its mystique, reinforcing the idea that Spinosaurus was unlike anything else. Its silhouette alone, long snout, sail rising high, tail sweeping behind, is instantly recognizable, a signature etched into the visual language of dinosaurs. There is also a more subtle legacy. The lesson of fragility. Spinosaurus teaches us that even the mightiest creatures can vanish, leaving only fragments behind. Its original fossils were destroyed by human war, a stark reminder of how easily knowledge can be lost. Its extinction millions of years earlier shows the same truth on a larger scale. No reign is eternal, no mastery immune to the shifting tides of Earth. In this way, Spinosaurus becomes not only a symbol of power, but also of impermanence, a reminder of the delicate balance all life must navigate. And yet, despite this impermanence, Spinosaurus endures through its story. It endures in the excitement of a child pointing at its skeleton in a museum. It endures in the debates of scientists piecing together its tail or sail. It endures in the way it forces us to broaden our vision of what dinosaurs could be, to imagine them not just as land dwellers but as innovators of every environment. Its legacy also invites us to reflect on ourselves. We too are creatures living in a world of transition. Our rivers shift, our climates change, our survival depends on adaptation. In Spinosaurus, we see both the triumph of evolution and the vulnerability of dependence. Its mastery of rivers was brilliant, yet its specialization may have bound it too tightly to a niche that disappeared. In that story, we find both inspiration and warning, a mirror of the challenges all species face when their world begins to change. Finally, Spinosaurus leaves us with a sense of wonder. For all the science, for all the debates, there remains something ineffable about it. To imagine standing at the edge of a Cretaceous river, watching its sail cut across the water, its jaws snap upon a fish, its massive body glide through the current, that is to touch a kind of magic. It reminds us that the Earth has been home to creatures beyond our wildest imaginings, and that discovery is not about taming mystery but about expanding it. In the end, the legacy of Spinosaurus is one of transformation. It transformed our understanding of dinosaurs. It transformed our imagination of what life can be. It continues to transform as new discoveries reshape its story. Though it vanished from the rivers of North Africa millions of years ago, it remains alive in the flow of science, in the minds of dreamers, and in the endless wonder of those who hear its name. And so, as we close this chapter, we prepare to drift gently into the conclusion of our journey. We have followed Spinosaurus from its watery kingdom to its struggles on land, from its young hatchlings to its mysterious extinction, from Stromer's discovery to modern debates. Now, as the night settles around us, we take with us not just facts but a feeling, the awe of knowing that creatures like Spinosaurus once lived, and that their legacy still shapes the way we see the world. And so our journey with Spinosaurus comes to a close. We have walked along the riverbanks of ancient North Africa, watched its sail rise above the reeds, and followed its shadow beneath the water's surface. We have seen how its body was shaped for a world of rivers and lakes, how it hunted among shoals of giant fish, how it faced rivals and dangers in a land filled with giants. We traced its story through time, from its fragile beginnings as a hatchling to its reign as master of the waterways, and finally to its mysterious disappearance. Spinosaurus was more than a predator. It was a reminder of life's creativity, of evolution's ability to carve new paths in unexpected places. It broke the rules we thought we knew about dinosaurs, showing us that they were not confined to land, but could master water too. It was a creature of boundaries, living between worlds, neither fully of the land nor wholly of the water, but something in between, and in that space it became extraordinary. Though its sail no longer rises above the rivers, and its jaws no longer snap upon the fish of ancient lakes, Spinosaurus endures in another way. It endures in the fossils that whisper its story, in the debates that keep its memory alive, and in the wonder it sparks each time we imagine it gliding silently through the currents. Its legacy is not just in science, but in the awe it inspires, a legacy that stretches across millions of years from its time to ours. As the night deepens and we leave behind the rivers of the Cretaceous, let us carry that sense of wonder with us. The world has held creatures stranger and grander than we often dare to dream, and their stories remind us that life is vast, mysterious, and endlessly surprising. Good night, and and may your dreams drift as calmly as the waters where Spinosaurus once ruled.